So apparently lonely men on the internet are saying drizzle drizzle as a response to sprinkle sprinkle, which is like that whole women empowerment movement online started by the sprinkle sprinkle lady. I actually don't know her name. I mean no disrespect by it. All the power to her. Keep doing what you're doing. If it's teaching women to take their power back, I'm all for it. But in response to this 4B movement where women are deciding they don't want men, they don't need men, they're just gonna boycott men altogether. These men are now saying drizzle drizzle, and I feel like I'm being pulled into it because they're starting to comment that shit in my comment section of my videos simply because I'm a woman.
Wrong! That's wrong!
So let me get this straight. You find that it's totally acceptable to adopt the 4B movement, a thoroughly debunked myth that you use to justify your unwarranted contempt for men. You find it socially acceptable to bash men for the crime of existing, making fun of them for not spending money on you, and shaming them for every nonsensical reason under the sun, and you've made it clear you're a strong and independent birthing person who don't need no man. But now that a man has written drizzle drizzle in your comments section, all of the sudden men have gone too far and need to be put in their place, huh? And now you feel like you're forced to stick up for yourself because apparently drizzle drizzle is the worst thing to happen to the internet since the Rickroll. Well, I consider myself the most gentlemanly of intergalactic space gentlemen, so feel free, sister. Hit me with your best shot.
Here's my thing about it. How are you not embarrassed with saying drizzle drizzle? All that's telling me is that you can't make it wet enough to rain. That's what drizzling is. When water's falling from the sky, but it's not even worth calling it rain, it's just a drizzle. Like, it's not even raining outside enough to water your plants, but it's drizzling enough to dirty your fucking car after you washed it. Drizzle, drizzle. Drizzle, drizzle, because we don't know what it really feels like when she's wet. That's the one. That's it. You guys want to stick with that?
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
Well, let it not be said that I didn't give this broad a chance to fail. I would say nice try on the insult, but you don't deserve a consolation prize. It really is that bad. For some reason, modern broads think that making fun of self-respecting men for not getting any bedroom action is somehow the ultimate burn. But that's just because she overvalues her stench vault of mucus-coated regret. She knows that she has nothing else to offer. She's dull, woefully uneducated, politically radicalized, and insufferably smug. So it sounds to me when a self-respecting man doesn't sleep with you, it's actually kind of a flex for us. That means we have a higher standard of respect for ourselves and a higher value for our time. We know the truth after all. There's no real sense in wasting any portion of our lives in exchange for 3 minutes of blatantly unenthusiastic bedroom mediocrity.
That's funny because it's so true.
Lonely man epidemic has gotten so bad. Some of my professors have actually started talking about it in classes in the last couple of years, and about like the way that women are starting to thrive and survive and just like live beyond our means, but in the best way possible, and how men are holding themselves back, causing this lonely man epidemic where you would rather hold a podcast room full of guys and talk about women's body count all together, or invite a woman and make fun of her, than go to therapy. Like, you do realize that it's probably cheaper to go to therapy than start a podcast, right?
You must seek therapy. That's where I would go with that, but that's my own.
Well, you got it backwards, woman. Starting a podcast is, in fact, cheaper than therapy, and if you ask me, it's probably a more worthwhile endeavor. It's a craft that requires constant practice, dedication, research, and drive. Now, in terms of the larger podcasts that have professional-grade setups, sure, that stuff is expensive, but they were able to purchase those thanks to profits made from the podcast itself, which was made from hard work from humble beginnings. All you really need to get started is some recording equipment, some of which is fairly cheap, some form of means of posting your content, and some recording software. That's about it. Therapy, on the other hand, requires hundreds of dollars per session, and there's no real guarantees for progression. So if I had the choice between investing my money in a podcast or hiring a therapist, I think I know which one I'd choose every time. Honestly, a podcast sounds more productive and a lot more fun.
Indeed! My TikTok really ended up on the wrong side. But I think we can have a teaching moment with this, and that's why I wanted to reply to it, because Mr. Perfect doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist, and I'll explain why. As humans, we are fatally flawed. That is the beauty of being human, right? I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, the next person is not perfect. But in relationships, you can have a partner that shows up willing to commit to you, willing to try to meet your standards, willing to communicate, willing to understand you, willing to love you the way that you want to be loved. And so I'm not waiting for Mr. Perfect, but I am waiting for that person who can show up for me like that. And obviously I'll be showing up for them like that too. I'm not settling anymore.
And that's an interesting thing about mathematics is when you're 50% right, you're 100% wrong.
Yes, that's true, woman. Humans are indeed flawed creatures, and General Chadman Raphael Pookieton is of no exception to that rule. But therein lies the problem. You claim that humans are not without their imperfections, and you're expecting that magnificent tank commander to blindly accept your many imperfections, but also alter his way of living to cater to your said imperfections. Meanwhile, you're expecting this man to have dealt with his financial and emotional imperfections to the point where they're no longer significant issues in his life, and not only that, you've changed the relationship into one gigantic business transaction. Only when your physical, emotional, and financial needs are met will you be able to provide the minimum amount of support to the general as he charges his tanks across the battlefield of life. And you're dead wrong on the final aspect of your argument, woman. Mr. Perfect, he does exist. Here's proof.
And yes, I am perfect in every way. In fact, when I was born, the doctor handed me to my mother, and the very first word out of her mouth was, perfect. What else?
Granted, this man may not exist on this particular plane of existence anymore, but when you've got a man as magnanimous as that, you gotta ask yourself one question, woman. Why would he ever want to settle for a creature like you?
Checkmate. Checkmate. Checkmate.
Dang. Last night I went out with a couple friends and we were sitting outside watching a concert, and we were just talking about how men never approach women. And I get it, it's nerve-wracking, it's uncomfortable, it could be like severe rejection, all these things, but it's frustrating when it feels like women have to do all of the work. So there was a couple guys that were clearly looking at us, and we decided to do a little experiment. So one of my friends, she went to the bathroom, and on her way back, she decided to stand like 10 feet from them. She's not going to approach them, but she's going to stand 10 feet from them all alone. And you're talking outdoors, concert.
That is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So when you say that it's frustrating because a woman is expected to do all of the work you're referring to is standing 10 feet from a group of guys that you're assuming are checking you out and just waiting for them to approach you? Yeah, that's not work, lady. What's work is a man having to constantly keep his eyes open in a public venue to ensure that he is not being recorded and needlessly being put on blast for being a creep, a predator, or some type of other man of ill intent. There are hundreds of active cameras at a concert, and it only takes one meddler to ruin that poor bastard's life, especially when you consider we live in an age where if you so much as look at an attractive woman, that's grounds for spamming that man's employer with hate mail and getting him fired. So with all of that on the table, can you really blame a man for going to a concert, enjoying some music, minding his own business, and not shooting his shot?
And she is just, in fact, I forgot that she was doing this experiment, and the look on her face looked like she was lost. So I was like, hey, we're over here. But I was like, oh yeah, we're doing this experiment. So she definitely looked approachable, almost looked like she needed help, and then she was just casually enjoying the music, even looks back at them. All the while, my other friend and I are watching, and these guys are like gawking at her, just non-stop staring at her.
Really?
So not only did this experiment prove what we already knew in the first place, it also proves that you are terrible at strategic thinking. Okay, so she's standing in front of these guys, right? And just standing around with what I can only assume is a massive crowd of people. And you are standing behind these guys who are standing in front of your friend and keeping an eye on her because she's apparently looking back at them occasionally. So if you're standing behind these guys and spying on them, then how do you know they're gawking at her? They could just be minding their own business or looking at someone else in this massive crowd. You clearly didn't position yourself to see their faces because you completely forgot about the experiment you were doing. So you're basing all of this on pure assumption. And even if those guys did find this woman attractive, the entire group of dudes isn't gonna just drop what they're doing to go talk to her. Bros don't ditch their bros to go chase tail. You're forgetting the golden rule, sister.
Brothers before wars, David.
And she stands there for at least 10 minutes doing this dancing and within 10 feet. And not once, Not once did they approach her. Not once did they even attempt to. And she walks then by them and around to come back to us, and they are just gawking, staring at her as she walks back. So as we get up to leave for the night, we walk literally within 2 inches of them, right in front of them, and not one says a thing.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Good for you.
Woman, you need to listen to the words that you're saying. Instead of doing the easiest thing by walking up to a comfortable distance and saying hello to these guys, you decided that it was appropriate behavior to walk towards them and violate any physical boundaries these men may have had, all in an attempt to make them talk to you. Woman, if the situation was reversed and a man walked within 2 inches of you, you would record a TikTok about how you don't feel safe going to concerts, and you would be willing to do everything you could to bring that man to justice. Newsflash, lady, men don't exist to be used as rats in your maze of excuses as to why you don't feel the need to grow up, but you justify it by saying that it's okay to make men uncomfortable if it means you don't have to bother talking to them. They're men. They should be taking it as a compliment. Seriously, shame on you.
Mind you, when she came back from the bathroom, she did get approached by 4 men that were like 65, because I feel like that the men of that age and genre, that they just know how to approach women. They just know, like, that's in their DNA, and somewhere along the lines it's gotten lost. And we were sitting there observing, and there was only one girl that was really talking to a few men, and every single time she was approaching them.
This is just so shocking. I mean, I must just be so monumentally naive.
You are.
Well, those men grew up in a society where it was considered socially acceptable for men to walk up to women and talk to them without fear of massive retaliation. They were encouraged to be masculine and confident because they knew that's what women desired. And now, considering that a majority of modern women have some form of daddy issues, it's really unsurprising how you'll give Chad and older men in their 60s a pass. But our generation has been told countless times to leave you alone and to mind our own business, that any form of confidence is toxic, that if we try to hit on you, it's because we are predatorial. So we don't approach you anymore. We gave you exactly what you wanted under threat of you ruining our lives with false accusations and complete destruction of our peace. And there you sit, shocked and appalled that you're still unhappy even though you got exactly what you wanted.
So what is it? Like, what do women need to do to be approachable? We thought, okay, we're sitting in a group of 3, that can be intimidating. So she went out on her own, stood 10 feet, even did a little glance at them, was standing all alone, and still nothing. Like, what do women need to do to be approachable for a man to approach them when they're out?
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
Earth to the smooth-brained woman, we've been telling you what to do for the last decade. You demanded a complete overhaul to the rules of the game, and now the rules have changed for good. Can't have it both ways, sister. You can't expect to be an empowered boss bae yas queen, but also be an approachable damsel in distress. You wanted boss bae, you live with boss bae. Dudes aren't gonna approach anymore, so the ball has been left firmly in your court, and your job is not difficult at all. All you have to do is walk up to the guy and say hello, follow that up with being friendly and feminine, and you have a 95% success rate according to modern statistics. But we all know you'd rather subsist on pity and confusion than admit that you completely destroyed traditional pair bonding with your irresponsible antics. And judging from your inability to use basic conversational English, you're probably doing men a favor with your ignorance. And that's gonna do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you one and all for checking out this new video, and until next time, peace out, homies.